fiction, science fiction, horror, fantasy, crime, LGBT, thriller.
You have now entered the House of Mystery with your hosts, Eric Shapiro, David North Martino, John Copenhaver, and Al Warren.
Heard on KCAA 106.5 FM Los Angeles,
102.3 FM Riverside,
and 105.0 AM Palm Springs.
And we have joining us the author of The Logic of Heaven, and it's Stephen Ford Williams, and he's from the UK. And I have to say thank you for joining us. How are you doing tonight?
Thank you for having me. Yeah, I'm fine. It's getting very cold in the UK now. It's getting ready for the Christmas activities. But yeah, very good. Thank you.
Oh, good. Comes in. Yeah, we've got a little bit of snow here last night and today. So yeah, it's that time again. Oh, wow. It wakes you up. Yeah. It wakes you up to December.
It does indeed. We've had quite a good season, so can't complain.
No, can't complain. It's a pretty good summer, you know.
Yeah.
So okay, now I was co-hosting the Buzz just over a week ago, and I was really interested in the subject and your book.
Right.
I got it, The Logic of Heaven, and was going through it, and really fits to what our listeners would like. So let's start, just for the people that haven't heard of you or haven't read the book, who you are and what got you into the Logic of Heaven.
Sure. Yeah. Well, it's been quite a long journey thinking about the book. I've had quite a few points in my life where I've had questions about things which have happened to me. I've been an adventure cameraman for most of my life, filming high-activity sports in various locations around the world. Two in particular, one was in China and one was in the Yemen. Both times I had near-death experiences, which made me think about what comes next. The one in China, where I was almost executed for contravening some of their laws to where I was filming, and at the point when I had a gun put on my head, to my nose, I thought, oh my God, this is it. And my body went into like a electric shock mode, and I started to see the images of my past. Let's say this has happened a number of times in my life, and it was all brought to a head when I lost my father. About 2 weeks after his passing, I had the most incredible dream. I'd go so to say that it was more of a vision of what actually happens next. During the night that I had this dream, I believed I'd been asleep for days, because the amount of information that was passed to me, when I woke in the morning, I said to my wife, how long have I been asleep? And she said, well, it's the normal 5 or 6 hours. Why? I said, well, I've just been given this incredible image of what happens to us when we die and the whole process. And she suggested that I go and sit in my office and write the whole thing down. Well, I was there for 6 hours and wrote 10 A4 pieces of paper back to back with the amount of information that came from this incredible dream. And it took me a number of years to decipher all the information, because the things that were given to me didn't make any sense to me at all. So over the years, I researched and tried to make sense of all these things which were given to me, and that what formed the book, The Logic of Heaven.
Wow, quite an experience. So you had a couple of near-death experiences. So was it typical to what a lot of people report, or a lot of times you read about going through a tunnel and seeing a light and life flashing for your eyes? You said something about that.
Yeah, sure. Each time was slightly different, because one was a car crash I had, where I went through my life flashing before my eyes, and a bright light, which seemed like a tunnel. But each time, we were talking milliseconds. This wasn't any length of time between the incident and what I experienced. But every time I came out before it went the whole distance. Now, the difference between those times and my dream, when I was asleep, I was given a sort of what can I say, a position where I was an observer of what was happening to somebody that was going through the death process. So I was at the side of it, watching their life's experiences flashing down this tunnel, and then eventually their light going down the tunnel, because their life force was ending, and it was them that was going down the tunnel to the bright light. And I watched the whole process. But to me, it looked like I was watching a planet out in space. It was absolutely huge. And this is what took me a long time to decipher size, because I didn't know where it had all been happening. And say, for all the purposes, it looked like a planet in space, but it had this umbilical cord, which was the tunnel. And it was just amazing. But then I was given a glimpse within this planet. This planet opened up, and there was millions upon millions of layers, and I was taken through the layers, and each layer was a different period in time, which was denoted by the clothes that they were wearing, or the buildings. But as I went deeper and deeper into this sphere, I was clearly going back in time, and I got back to sort of Egyptian type time. I don't think it was actually Egypt at that time, but that was the sense I got. And but all the time, each layer was getting brighter and brighter, and I was just, in my dream, I was becoming very comfortable with where I was, and I had this overwhelming feeling that I would like to be there. And then I was, as if I was snatched by the scruff of the neck, and it said, "No, this is not your time. You will have this to come, but this is not your time. We are just showing you what happens." So then I was taken back out through the layers, and I watched the time coming up to current times, and was then taken back to my point of being able to watch the whole process, where the planet closed up, and as soon as the tunnel part of the process was finished, it detached from this huge planet, and the planet started to spin, and the tube, or the tunnel, became almost like a pen, and started to imprint on the surface of this planet something that looked like barcodes, but it was very much more organic than the barcodes that you'd have on a can of beans. This was all over it, but it was clear that information was being imparted onto the surface of this planet. And it wasn't for a number of years that I realised that this wasn't a planet. This was a soul cell. This was deep within the matter of being, right down in the subatomic structure of everything. And that's where, from my working things out, I came up with the fact that was heaven. That's where we were going. We go into the subatomic soul cell, which is like a planet. But the the beings that were in there, the previous owners of that soul cell, their entire life force had been downloaded into their layer. And that's what constitutes their heaven. It's all in, but in each layer, it was just like being as we are now. There was a sky, there was ground, but these were layers. They weren't on the outside of a planet like we are on the planet Earth. They were on the inside of a layer. Each one had their own particular layer, and that was built up of layers as well, which later on I worked out why there are layers within layers of each subatomic soul cell layer. It's fascinating. The more that I sort of researched it, the more logical it came, and that's hence the name, The Logic of Heaven, because the process seemed to work. Because all near-death experienced people say that their lives flash before their eyes, and for their lives to flash before their eyes, there must be a purpose to that. Why does that happen? So that came out as that's the download. You know, we live this life to make memories, and all those memories are stored away for a purpose. So then it had to work, what is the purpose? Well, the purpose is continuation of life. All those little packets of memories are little packets of energy, and all that energy is downloaded to the subatomic soul cell for reuse. And the whole system seemed to work on emotional weight. You know, when a layer is happy and the memories there are being used are happy, that has a very light emotional weight. But when there's sadness or there's tragedy, that is a heavy emotional weight. So if you think about this soul cell as a sphere, but if you cut it in half and looked at it, it would look like a DVD disc with millions and millions of layers, and each layer is a different chapter, and within each chapter there are various storylines. Well, that's what came to me as the whole structure of the subatomic soul, and it's all there to generate energy, the life force, which is within us.
So you're saying that when we die, we download our memories.
We don't download,
well,
they are downloaded. That's our purpose. We're here to make memories, and that's why we store them. You know, it's strange that we store such incredible detail, where we can actually remember smells, we can remember flavors, colors. But the interesting thing that came out of all my research was the one thing we do not remember, and I don't think we take with us, is pain. You know, if a woman remembered the pain of childbirth, she would never have another child. We remember having pain, but we don't actually physically remember the pain, because each time we think about it, we relive that horror. We know we've had pain, but it's not the pain that we actually experienced at the point when that pain was inflicted. So that gave me quite positive feelings about what happens next, because the fact that we take tastes and smells, because they're all stored in our brain, but we don't take pain, which I find interesting.
So what happens to all that memory? So we live these.
Sorry?
Oh, I was just saying we live these experiences, or we're living for the memory, or the experiences, the smells, the tastes, the things.
Exactly.
So where does it go? That's what I was.
As I say, if you look at this, just consider the soul as a ball, and when we die, we contribute one layer to the inside of that ball, like an old-fashioned gobstopper. It has many rings. Well, we contribute one ring. It happens in nature. You know, a tree is built up of rings. Many things are built up. The planet is made up of various layers. And I think we are part of nature, and the cycle of the universe and everything works very much the same. And I think our souls are very much like trees. They are built up of layers. But instead of the soul getting bigger like a tree, with the dream that I had, every time a new soul was came to the end, basically souls are reused. I think souls go on, and this is why we have regressions and things. We can remember things from past lives that weren't our own. That's because our subatomic soul has many layers, and from each of those layers, sometimes some of the information emanates out, and that's what gives us dreams. That what some people can tune into their regressive life, past lives. But our layer, when we are downloaded into our layer, all our memories and all the emotions are reused in almost like a storytelling thing. And this is where I think we get the impression of heaven is we exist again, but not in a physical state. These are emotional states of a being, because our physical state ceases to be after we die. But all our memories, our energy, our life force, it's what goes on within that soul cell. And as I say, the tree gets bigger, but with the soul cell, it still stayed the same size. And what happens, each time a new entity dies and their soul is downloaded, it's compressed all the other layers down to the center. And the center is where I feel God is. So over the millennium, as each layer squeezes in, we do indeed one day become one with God. But that may be over many millions of years.
So how does that work on someone that, let's say when we take someone that's, as we'd call evil or bad, or does really horrible things in their life? Or how does that translate? Does that get stored as well?
Exactly, and that's, I believe, what we sow, we reap. Because if we live an inherent evil life and we do bad things, that's what we take with us to be within our soul cell for the eternity, or until we meet God, and our sins are then washed away because we are then absorbed into the energy, the power of God. I'm not religious in any way, but I do believe strongly in the being of God as the creator of all of this. And I think that God is within us. Is within every single cell of our bodies. And within every single cell of our body is a soul cell. I don't think we have one soul. I think we have a soul system where every single cell of our body is connected together. But at the point of death, there is not just one soul that leaves our body. Every single cell in our entire body receives that download. And it's the numbers game. That's what nature uses. You know, when a tree pollinates, it gives off pollen, but it doesn't give off one. It gives off trillions. And I think it's the same when the human body eventually, through putrefaction or incineration, cremation, gives off millions of subatomic soul cells, each one exactly the same, with all the same information, because the purpose that we are in existence is creation, to make our species continue. And the life force which is within us, that downloaded to our soul cell, is reused. Because if your listeners get my book, it explains the next process where the soul cells are once again used in the conception process of another being. And these soul cells are energy. They're the life force. With all those things going on within it, that's what's generating the EMF, the electric motive force, which is in every single cell of our body, which is where we get our electricity to power our heart, to power our brain. Because if you ask a doctor or scientist, where is my battery? They don't know. They don't have any idea at all. Well, I believe we have a little soul cell in every single cell of our body producing a very, very small amount of current, and that's where our life force is. It's throughout the whole of our body. It works. It does work because it's got to be somewhere. We have to have a life force. We have to have a soul, and I think they're one and the same. And it's an ongoing process where our memories are used in the afterlife to power the next generation of that soul for another being to be created, and that soul cell is reproduced in each single cell. And that's what I saw in the second part of my dream, where I saw the soul cell be ingested within the sperm and the egg to create the life force. And as you remember earlier, I mentioned that as the umbilical cord broke off, the tunnel broke away from the planet. It put all this information onto the surface of the soul cell. In the second part of my dream, it explained why that was there, and its purpose was to give the information to tell the DNA where and what each DNA's purpose was. And it also gave things like adaptation to habitat, artistic abilities, things that we take for granted, and yet without that information we would never have survived. If you go back to the very beginning when life started on this planet, you had a little amoeba which probably lasted for a millisecond, but in that millisecond that amoeba had a soul which went through the process which I've just explained. And when that amoeba died, its soul cell went on, but that amoeba had learnt in that millisecond a little bit of information, so that when the next amoeba was born, it had a bit more information, so it lasted 10 milliseconds, and so on, and until we've come to where we are today, that our subatomic souls are the information portal that have taken us from that single cell amoeba to where we are now. It's a learning process, but it's a process that records everything for use by the next generation.
And so how do you figure? So you're not typically in any of the religion factors. What about life after death and psychics and ghosts and things like that? How do you assess that?
Well, everything is based around energy, and you can get sort of. In my book, I explain about the human aura, why we have a human aura, what creates that human aura. Basically, we are. If you take my theory on board, then you have to accept that we live in a sea of souls, wherever there is water vapor, because I believe the souls came to this planet within water. It's within, because without water you can't have life. So it stands pretty much the reason that the life came within the water. So if you bear that in mind, we breathe H2O, hydrogen and oxygen, which is the components of water, but in different in a gas form rather than in a liquid form or in an ice form. So we're breathing in H2O, which is full of subatomic souls. We derive energy from that. That's what's within it. And it's the same when you drink a glass of water. Within the water is subatomic souls. And that's why water has such incredible properties, because it has all these little tiny cells generating energy through the process of these layers having different emotive levels. And each layer is moving at a different speed, but it's generating kinetic energy, that's what's put into our bodies in each of the cells of our body.
How do you assimilate then with the animals? Like what's their role in all of this?
Animals are exactly the same. Animals will have souls. Anything which has a life force has a soul, because it has a life force. It has an energy, because otherwise they won't exist. So an animal will have its own type of soul. They're not interchangeable, just as dogs and cats don't breed. It's a different part of nature, but it doesn't mean they can't be exactly the same in their own structure. But we're just not our souls aren't exchangeable.
So they're kind of on their own evolution, their own journey.
Of course, that's right, and that's how they've evolved. We've all evolved through adaptation to habitat. No matter where we live, we adapt to the type of habitat which we live in. That's the nature of evolution and advancement via each different generation.
Okay.
There's no explanation other than what I've proposed for how Darwin's theory of evolution works. My theory goes beyond Darwin's theory, but it explains how Darwin's theory works. It gives all the answers: why we're here, how we've evolved, how our body knows how to create itself through DNA. The DNA are just the building blocks. They don't have any conscience. They don't have any brain. The subatomic soul cell is the brain. It's the information. It's the pilot of a plane, a cargo plane. If you look at the DNA as the cargo plane, the subatomic soul cell is the pilot that knows where to go. But it is so well placed within the structure of matter. That's why we haven't discovered it yet. But it will be. I'm pretty sure one day that this theory will be proven. But how long it's going to take, or whether we're not meant to know it. Maybe I felt I was being shown this to pass on this process because it is non-religious. One of the overwhelming feelings I had was that the religion is wrong. It's not right. When people are committing such atrocities because of one religion or another, it is not the will of God. God is pure energy, and it's not corrupt. Corruption is part of man's structure. It's not the way of. You only have to look at the beautiful scenery of this planet. Why would a God that created all that beauty create the death and destruction that is happening on this planet now? And for some religions to say to martyrs, well, if you kill somebody or have a fatwa, then you will go to heaven and you will be given so many virgins. That is just so wrong.
What do you think the reason for the corruption is like that, Bud? Like, where does it come
I
from?
think, it's the necessary evil, because we need balance. And if everything was pure and perfect, it would soon grind to a halt, because you have to have yin and yang, positive and negative. It's a fact, but we need a balance. And that, I think maybe our balance is we are, again, becoming quite evil. There's too much evil in the world. And that's what concerns me. And it will always be there, but it needs to be on the right ratio.
So it's out of balance, you think?
I think it's getting out of balance, definitely, yes.
Do you think there's a way of getting it back into balance that's thought out? Or
Well, I'd like to think so, because to my mind, a lot of the imbalance is caused by religion. A lot of the wars are caused by that. But we do need to have those wars, because otherwise we become overpopulated. But
so how are we going to grow out of organized religions like that? It seems like it's been with us forever, and there's new ones being created. I mean,
absolutely.
So how do we grow out of that? How do we evolve to that?
I wish I had those answers. I don't know why I was given the information that I've put in my book. It was just given to me, and I felt that I had to put it in a book. To my mind, it works, and it's given me a great solace that there is continuation after we die. Because each of those layers seem to be nice places, but the degree of difference between sadness and happiness was not so brutal as it is on this life. We do take with us sadness, and we do take evil. And we will relive that through eternity. But it didn't seem as brutal or as bad as it is on this planet. I think it is better. We go to a better place, but we do take a lot of the not so nice stuff with us, as well as the nice stuff.
Well, yeah, that information. Yeah.
I think if we live our life to the best of our abilities and be true to yourself, then I believe that we do have a much better afterlife. But if you're evil, you still will be evil in your afterlife. But I think it will haunt you. Because I think if you say God is like a parent, he does try to teach us. Evil is not his way, but he understands, like any child, they have to make their own mistakes to learn that, do not touch that fire. If you touch that fire, you'll be burned. But invariably we reach out and touch that fire because we want to experience for ourselves. And I think that's my impression, that God lets us make our mistakes, hoping that we will rectify our mistakes ourselves.
Do you think there's a difference between someone that's evil? You take like Hitler, or you take some of the people that have done some awful things, and compare it to someone that, let's say, like that's just sick. Like some of the serial killers that are just mentally disturbed. They're just totally off. They're hearing voices and talking. So they're going to take their bad experiences with them as well.
Sure.
Do you think there's a difference?
Definitely a difference, yes. In my book, I give examples of different types of souls that we can be given. And in the book, I talk about child prodigies, how do we get child prodigies where you have a 3 or 4 year old child who neither parents play the piano, they've never had a lesson, and yet they can play a concerto on the piano. Well, they, in my mind, have received a subatomic soul from someone like Beethoven. Now, likewise, you could receive a subatomic soul which has come from Jack the Ripper or Hitler. You will unfortunately get some of their inherent evil as opposed to the creative powers of being able to play a piano. So this is a process that goes on. You can't sort of eliminate that. It's a fact of nature, I think.
And so the other subject I was interested in is, so what about the emotion, I guess, in love and connections of meeting someone that you think you've known all your life?
Absolutely. This is all down to the regression, and because it's a numbers game with the soul cells, I mean, we can come into contact with soul cells which we may have had a connection with, maybe a lover or a mother or father in another life, and this energy comes to us. We sense these things, and in my book I explain the aura. I started to talk about it. Sorry, I got sidetracked there. But the aura, I believe, is the subatomic soul cells from our dearly departed that are attracted to us, because like soul cells attract. It's the magnetism. So we are actually walking around with, I've got on me soul cells of my mother and my father and my grandfather, because one or two of their cells will have found their way to me, and it's a natural attraction. And that's what makes the glow, is the energy which is within those soul cells, which is normally used for the life force. Because I think I've missed a bit out, really. There are two types of soul cells. There's passive and there's active soul cells. The active soul cells are the ones which are within our soul cell, in the actual cells of our body. And they're the ones that give us the energy. So they're the active soul cells. After death, and they're completed, after they've received their scribing of all the information on the surface, they become passive soul cells. They're the ones that are out there in the environment and in the fluid, in the oxygen that we breathe. And it's a cycle thing. And it's not until one of those single soul cells is at the precise point of the sperm and the egg coming together that passive soul cell gets switched on and gives that little bit of energy that binds the sperm and the egg to form a human being. That's the point at which we get our soul. That's the point at which we get our life force. And then as the cells divide, so does the soul cell divide. And they're identical. Every time they split. There's a soul cell within the center of each of those cells that create our body. But the information on the soul cell tells each of the cells, well, you're going to be part of an eye, you're going to be part of a leg bone, you're going to be skin cells. And that's how the whole process goes on. It's a cycle. It's a cycle of life.
So you think the love and attraction is just more of an object of that cycle rather than true?
No, I mean, emotions are energy, and that's what we sense. I mean, if you've got a lot of soul cells around you, and going back to what you said about entities and energy of ghosts and what have you, it's almost like a fog of soul cells which have sort of come together. I do have the figures in the book. I can't remember off the top of my head, but we have, I think it's 55 trillion cells within our body, once we die, there are 55 trillion soul cells bursting out into the environment. Now, if 100,000 of them are stuck together and they're all energized, that energy can then seep through to our plane. And this is how, ghosts and things that happen can be explained by my theory. This is energy. This is pure energy. There's no substance to it at all. The subatomic soul cell is, although to me it was given as looking like a planet, but there was nothing solid there. It was pure energy.
So I remember in the last segment on the Buzz, you were talking about cremation. So you sort of recommended cremation.
Well, I think it's a way of getting your soul cells released quickly. I mean, they will be released through interment, but obviously the energy has more at the point of death. As this little the tunnel broke away from the planet, and after it had finished writing all over the surface of this planet, it then turned into sort of like a laser beam and started to burn the blackness around. Because I thought I was in space for years. I was trying to work out that I must have been in another part of the universe where this was all happening. But then as I strived to work it out, I realized it was all happening within the matter. But this tunnel, the term to describe, was burning away the connection between the soul and the being to release it, because that's it. That's its job. That's what it has to do in nature. It has to be released so it can be used once again. But it's a numbers game. You can't quantify how many soul cells are around us, because we are literally drinking them, breathing them, but that's what gives us energy. The passive soul cells give us less energy than the active ones. But every time a soul cell passes through our system, when we drink water, we derive that energy from the soul cell. Passes through, and it's on its way again. And then some get into the blood system, into the fluids within a woman's womb, and that's how they get into the system for the next stage, which is to create another being.
Almost like a virus.
Well, yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, that's nature emulating nature, isn't it? There's nothing new. It's just variations of a theme. But it always amazes me how a little tiny fly, a gnat, can bite me through my thick skin and cause me so much grief. And yet it's almost invisible to me. I don't see it. And how a flu virus, which we can't see, they're in the air around us, but those flu viruses this will give you some idea of scale. Those flu viruses will have subatomic soul cells in each cell of their construction. So you have to try and think very, very small. If you look into the universe within us, within the atoms, the size and the distance of space between the atoms, it's just like looking up into the heavens and looking at the planets. But it's all relative size. It's all down to the size of space.
And so when you had this dream and this started happening and you started kind of going through and trying to figure out what was happening, you sort of mentioned how it sort of you thought it was meant for you to have this happen to you, and you to pass on the information, through a book or however you have to do it. So in that frame of thinking, I'm thinking, okay, so that means things happen for a reason. So I guess that's what you're trying to say, and that means everything in our lives sort of has a reason or a meaning.
Yeah, it's the law of chaos, really. But things come together, and everything happens for a reason. I live my life one day at a time. I let my life present itself each day to me. I'm very fortunate I can do that. But why I even thought about a lot of this thing that came to me, I have no idea. I mean, it's completely different to any other theory which is out there, but there aren't many theories about the entire structure of life and death that have a cycle to them. And this is why I'm convinced that what I was given is something that truly does happen. Because nobody has been able to tell me where my life force is. Nobody has been able to tell me where my soul is. Nobody has been able to tell me where I will go, that other than you will go to heaven or you will go to hell. But in my theory, it explains the whole process and explains how the process works and why it works. And it comes right back around. I'm nobody special. I really am not. I was dyslexic to the age of 21. I didn't write the book. I spoke the book into my iPad. And the chap that edited it for me, a professional editor, I said to him, look, you're going to have terrible troubles to edit this book because I'm dyslexic. And he said, don't worry, it'll take me 6 weeks to do that. Well, he finished it in 2 weeks, and he said, Steve, I've had people with degrees in English come to me with their books, which I had more trouble with. He said, yours was, it just seemed to flow naturally, and yes, it needed structuring, but he said it was all there. It was lovely, and I'm so pleased with the feedback I'm getting from people about how easy it is to read. They don't always understand the theory that I'm promoting it within the book. I've written the book as an autobiography of how my life has gone and how I've slowly, through my life, come to the point where I was given that message. There was nothing special other than there was lots of memories there which convinced me that what was given to me was right. It evolved through my entire life until the book was created.
Yeah, I recommend the book totally. It was just by accident that I come across it because they asked me to sit in on the other show.
Sure.
Otherwise, I don't know if I would have. So there's the connection.
You enjoyed it. That's the feedback I'm getting from people who work in terminal ill wards. That these people, so a lot of the people now, the baby boomers, have not necessarily got religion, but they're coming close to death, and they're worried because they haven't got any idea what's going to happen. And people are reading my book, and although it can't be proven, but neither can religion, but it gives them something to work forward to. They think, well, if Steve's right and I'm going to be in that layer, which is going to be my heaven. The interesting one that's come up quite a few times is I've had ladies contact me and say, I'm very worried about dying because I've been married 3 times. I loved all 3 of them. Which one will I be in heaven with? And I just said, you'll be with each one of them, because within each layer, they won't interact, those layers, but each layer will have an individual husband there. So you don't have to worry that you're not going to be with, you're going to be with one or the others. Within those layers within layers are different stories, different scenarios, which will be living out. I can't stress enough, the whole thing about life is the numbers game. Everything is multiples, apart from our individuality. And that's what we lose when we die. We lose our individuality because we cease to exist. But our memories and all our loved ones that are in our memories go with us within our soul self. It's not just people who have died before us. It's everybody we have come into contact with that has touched our lives, that are in our cell, our memory cells. They are downloaded with us.
Yeah. You know, what, oh, I'm sorry. What I just was going to say, what I found fascinating is, I think I'm not quite a baby boomer, but I see that about religion, and I've always sort of had a feeling that there's a God, but I sort of haven't bought into a lot of the organized religion groups, and how they, what you should and how you should live in order to get into heaven. Mm-hmm. So it's sort of, I understand that totally, and I think this is why it's a refreshing, and it's also a great book to read.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's sort of how I took it, because I think you're true. Baby boomers and even just a little bit Generation X, I guess they call us, are starting to look toward, well, what is it? And I see religions changing. Like how I look at how they've changed their points of view on woman, and then on about marriage, and then now people can live and have children without being married and getting divorced, and then homosexual marriage. How it sort of religion keeps on adapting to the mainstream society because it kind of has to. And I don't think, and that, I think that in itself is what creates the flaw in my point of view. Because they're saying, I look at things. I had an older sister, I still do, and years ago, and she had a child out of wedlock at 16, and this is back in the early 70s. She's quite a bit older,
right?
And that was just they sent her away. I mean, it was a controversy. It was just so bad back then. You don't get pregnant, and nowadays it's a common. It happens every day. Everybody's having several children from several fathers.
Sure. Yeah, indeed. Well, this is it. This is we are adapted to our habitat in not necessarily a good way. I'm not saying that that's wrong, but what is wrong is religion is adapting religion to fit society. Where if religion was true, they lived to the Gospels, they would maintain a line of righteousness. But we don't. That line of righteousness waves with society to now it's undistinguishable. There is no role models. We just are losing the plot, I think, of society. But religion has lost it more than anything. The scandals of the Catholic religious orders, where the priests were interfering with young boys, and then you have the Vatican sitting on a wealth which is just locked away and it is of no use to man or woman. They have the wealth to resolve a lot of the famine issues around the world, but they don't. They just sit on their treasures, and they have their gold cloaks and their rings and their candlesticks in solid gold. It's all so wrong. You can worship God from where you stand. God is within you, and He is the ultimate energy at the center of our souls. At the very center, I believe, is the true God particle within each one of our soul cells, and the thought that we will one day become at one with God as our soul cell is consumed within the center of that soul cell is to me, it's a wonderful thought.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's I agree totally. Now, I know I have a lot of listeners that get into paranormal and that, and so I have to go into the subject of aliens and lives from other worlds. What do you think? What's your thought on that?
I would love it to be so, because just as we evolved from the primordial soup, I think other life forms may have done somewhere else in the universe, but because we can't comprehend the distances between suns, let alone planets, I don't know. I think maybe if we have been visited, then they have left us to our own resources, or we are being controlled by them. So I go with both thoughts on that. Why they don't make themselves known? Obviously, maybe it's better that we don't know the truth.
Maybe we're just not ready.
I beg your pardon?
Maybe we're just not ready to know.
Maybe we're not. I mean, we are evolving very rapidly, but we're still very naive. And the fact that corruption is so relevant in this world, maybe we're not. Maybe we have to grow up and live better lives. But no, I would love to be contacted by an alien and to find out the secrets of the universe. I'd love to travel through the universe and see the wonders there, because just seeing what we have on our beautiful planet, I think it's just the tip of the iceberg of what actually exists within the universe. So, travel, time travel.
Yeah, that would be. I know it is amazing what we do have in the world. I mean, how beautiful it is. And it's funny how you don't really realize that until certain points of your life. Something you don't really see when you're young.
Sure, yeah, it's so true.
Yeah, how it just comes to pass. It's just, it's kind of the old cliche. Well, so how does everybody get a hold of you, and how do they get your book?
Right, I haven't got a website at the moment. I'm a bit sort of slow in getting everything sorted, but they can contact me on Facebook, Stephen Williams, and I have a page called The Logic of Heaven and the Soul. My books are available on Kindle. It's a couple of dollars, and on Amazon Books. That's amazonbooks.com or amazonbooks.uk.co. There you can actually get a paperback. It has been taken up by a publisher, but that won't be out until next year.
Okay. And so what's the plans for the future? What are you working on now?
Well, with the feedback I've received from The Logic of Heaven, I'm now working on The Logic of the Soul, which is a lot more in depth into the whole purpose of the soul and giving finite details on what my dream. So I haven't put everything in the book, not because I was holding off for the second book, so I didn't even think of a second book, but there was so much information that was, I'm still unraveling it now. It still comes to me in little fits and starts. So I'm writing that one, but to help people understand my theory, I've decided to write a novel which is about the subatomic soul theory, but in a fictional basis. And I'm actually writing it as a script for a movie, because I think the potentials within the whole theory is something that even Hollywood hasn't touched on yet. So I'm currently working on that one, and I hope to have that out in the new year. And that is one of a series, and one of those books will be about how alien contact work within the subatomic soul theory. And it all goes back to Kennedy, and just prior to the Kennedy assassination, when we had Roswell. So that's all figured into it's a book called Soul Splitters, and it's where civilization has found out where the soul is and are able to go through the layers to get to various information. So everybody that's read the bits that I've done are very, very enthusiastic about it. So I'm looking forward to getting that out soon.
Yeah, no, it sounds very interesting. I think it's great. Well, I've really enjoyed having our little chat here, and I hope we get to do it again and talk more. This is very interesting, and I thank you for
I'd love any feedback from your listeners, negative or positive. I just love to get people's impressions. And if they can say, well, no, you're definitely not right about that, because I'd love to know. But nobody yet has come up with anything which disproves or discredits my theory. And I've had some, pretty strong people try to do it. Religious people, scientists. I just enjoy the conversations that we have, and I see them going away thinking, maybe there is something to this guy, But there you go. But I really enjoyed talking to you, and I'd be happy to contribute to your program anytime you like.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, and what we do is we actually, after we run the show, and people actually send in all their questions and emails, I'll send you the most common and popular questions. And when you answer them, we actually post them on the website and the Facebook.
Lovely. I'd be pleased to do that. I was quite pleased because I listened on to the program after I was on the Buzz Radio, and I can't remember the other chap.
Kevin.
What was his name?
Kevin Thompson.
Kevin. You and Kevin really started to get into it. I was quite interested in the questions that you were posing, and I almost got on and answered them online, but I thought, no, I'll leave that for another day. And I had to be up early because I was working on a television program within 2 hours, and I hadn't had any sleep that night. So, but it was very interesting to hear the two of you talking about it, and hopefully your listeners will do the same. And just maybe, this theory could help people out. And that's all I want to do, is make people's lives better, and their look at death in a way that gives them maybe less fear of death.
Yeah, a little more hope.
Yes, indeed, hope, indeed.
Well, great. Well, thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
Show's over for now.
Was it as good for you as it was for me?
Well, good night.
This has been a production of the Z-Talk Radio Network.
I'll be back.